Russian President Vladimir Putin has requested the Russian parliament to accept the Republic of Crimea and Sevastopol as part of the Russian Federation. He addressed the nation and the world with a speech explaining the decision. He said Russia had had no claims on the territories since the collapse of the Soviet Union, hoping that Ukrainian authorities would respect the rights of the predominantly Russian population there. He said the recent coup in Kiev and the rise of ultranationalists have changed Russia's perspective. President Putin also said by condoning the coup, the West has crossed a red line. RT's Igor Piskunov has more on the speech.
Under Russian law, the agreement now has to be approved by the Constitutional Court. It has to be ratified by the Parliament, and the Constitution itself would have to be amended if a new entity was to join the Federation. And in his statement, President Putin called on the lawmakers to complete all these procedures. Now, also, he said that the main driving force behind all of this is the overwhelming desire seen on both sides for Crimea to join Russia, especially meaning the referendum which took place earlier in the Crimea, which Vladimir Putin called truly a historic event, in which over 96% of the local population voted for the Crimea to join Russia. He also said that the current moves are not aimed at harming Ukrainians. He even sympathizes to those who peacefully took part in the protests. He said he understood why they were feeling this need for political change, but Mr. Putin said, unfortunately, the violent way the new authorities came to power and the fact that many of them are ultra-nationalists makes it impossible not only for Moscow to recognize them as the new legitimate authorities of Ukraine, but also even to negotiate with them.
Who carried out the coup in Ukraine? Neo-Nazis, nationalists and anti-Semites, and they still define the country's political agenda. It's clear that there is no legitimate executive power in Ukraine right now. There is no one to negotiate with. Many of the government departments have been usurped by self-proclaimed officials who have no means of running the country.
The president also compared the situation to Kosovo, saying that when its independence was recognized by most Western countries, that created a precedent. And he says the way the same countries have been dealing with Crimea is not only based on double standards, but is simply cynical.
What do we hear from our colleagues in the West and in Europe? They say that we are violating international law, but I'm glad that they at least remember that international law exists. Better late than never. The Crimeans used Kosovo as a precedent, and our Western partners set this precedent themselves with their own actions and in a situation which is fully analogous to the situation in Crimea. They recognize Kosovo, and they prove that you do not actually need permission from the central government to declare your territory a sovereign state.
Mr. Putin also commented on accusations that Russia committed military intervention to the Crimea, saying he doesn't remember an example in history where military intervention would be possible without a single fired shot, unlike it happened in Yugoslavia, Iraq, Afghanistan. He gave other examples as well.
We have every reason to believe that the old policy of containing Russia is still in place, because we take an independent position. But everything has its limits, and in the case of Ukraine, our Western partners have crossed the red line. They were rude and unprofessional, and they have acted irresponsibly. Our Western partners prefer to use the principle that might is right. They believe that they are always in the right, that they are unique, entrusted by God to decide the fate of other nations. They apply pressure on other countries to get the resolutions that they need. And if that fails, they simply bypass the Security Council. That was the case in 1999 in Yugoslavia, as it was in Afghanistan and Iraq. And then they distorted a UN resolution on Libya. They did not merely enforce a no-fly zone, they bombed that country.
Of course, Putin also spoke about Crimea itself, stressing how important it is to protect all of the nationalities living there, including Ukrainians, Russians, ethnic Tatars. The president says that the Crimea may have 3 official languages, which would include Russian, Ukrainian, and Tatar.
That was RT correspondent Igor Piskunov.